government doing it? That's the $64 million question. They've promised, Mr Rudd, at times when he was in the opposition, promised that they would protect young children from the evils of the web, and he had one of those raves that some of these politicians do from time to time. So I think on the one hand you can see he's in a bit of trouble with Mr Abbott at the moment. There is a lot of concern that he will be wanting to get the runs on the board with some of these promises that he's made to show that he is a man that can deliver. He's a Prime Minister that actually can get results. So I think that reminds us again of why we have to amplify our voice of opposition and make sure this legislation doesn't get through. Another reason that has been suggested of why the government and indeed sections of the opposition are backing this legislation is that they want to get into bed with the conservative religious section that really is very strong in our community now. We see it in the New South Wales Parliament with the likes of David Clark from the extreme right-wing section of the Liberal Party. And this Christian section that you see coming through from the Christian Democrats, from the Family First Party, groups like the Exclusive Brethren, they now are a very strong lobby groups on government. And when you have Mr Abbott and Mr Rudd both professing that they are Christians, you start to get into a very murky world. And I'm not saying that's why they did it. It's certainly been put to me that that could be a reason. But again, I think it's a reminder to us, we have to be well organised. We have to get our voice out there, because I can tell you now, those forces are well organised. They are using the internet for their purposes to mobilise their people to put pressure on politicians that they want the internet censored so they can protect their children. Now, that's a con job. We know that, but we've got to convince those people in Canberra. And the only way we ever get decent things out of Macquarie Street and out of Canberra is when there's strong social movements. So again, congratulations for organising it today. We need to spread the message, and the Greens are really keen to work with you on this. Thanks very much. Happy to take questions too.
I'm Harry Fenwick of Truth News, which is your grassroots Truth News and podcast radio social news. I've got a question that's been on my mind about the...
You're speaking to the mic.
Government... oh, sorry, yeah, one minute. Yeah, I've got a question about how we deal with the government position on this in terms of the way they're presenting it most recently from Stephen Conroy and Kevin Rudd. What they're basically saying is that this filter is just a type of regulation in the same way that they regulate radio and television. They're basically running the argument that the internet has been unregulated all this time, and we just have to bring in this very normal, very well accepted form of regulation. And it actually makes it sound quite acceptable when they put it that way. And I think we really need to understand that argument and to have a counter-argument for it, because I think it's a totally false argument. But I'm just wondering what you actually think about that and how you might actually deal with that when they present it in that way.
Thanks very much for the question. I will actually take it up with my colleague, Senator Scott Ludlam, is the person from the Greens who's running this, looks after this portfolio federally, so it's a good question. Look, off the top of my head, and partly I am giving a simple answer, but basically this plays out in the media, and that's where we have to be able to get a very logical argument to combat what they're saying. I think we say the internet is already regulated. What you are talking about is censorship, and censorship will not save our children. I really think we've got to get it down to those small grabs, and I know a lot of you might find that frustrating, but I suppose because of the game that I'm in, that I often see when arguments get complicated, people's eyes glaze over, the journalists stop listening to you, and we've lost the moment. So I just think we've got to go on the front foot all the time and say it's already regulated. What you're doing is not going to stop children being exposed to pornography. You need to educate them, and you need to ensure that the parents are working with them, not just thinking everything's okay.
G'day, I'm Shaz. I'm a local resident of Parramatta and an Australian citizen, proud one at that, and I love the internet. and I want to thank you for coming out here today and supporting Block the Filter and this cyber-friendly family picnic. I'm just going to ask you, I represent Stop the Filter in that sense that we are the protest movement, I guess you could say, of stopping the filter, and we believe that the best way to do it is by protest and a city protest, and we're wondering if the Greens Party will be willing to support us in that, a peaceful assembly, to raise great awareness to the rest of Sydney, and would they be willing to even go far as support us with public liability and other things like that. And if the Greens support, one of the other ways of fighting this, besides our picnic, would be maybe a city protest in the next month before the bill is passed.
Thanks very much for the question. Oops. On the issue of liability, I think that could be possible. Need to speak to our party people. We often assist organisations with liability, but I must admit I'm not up on it, so we'll talk about that. We'll get each other's details. In terms of the protest, we'd be keen to support. We regularly support peaceful protests, and we also have an e-brief that goes out to thousands of people where we advertise things like that. So we'd be keen to talk to you about that as well, because the coming few weeks are the critical time when we've really got to get going on this.
Next one.
Joshua Jackson, truthnews.com.au. I'm just wondering, how would we, as the Greens member here, the whole notion that this is about child porn and stuff is so ridiculous to me, because I mean I've been on the web my whole life, since the mid '80s, and I've been to all sorts of corners. I've never come across this stuff ever. And, I mean, I'm sure it's out there, but I don't see how kids can... And look, kids can turn on the TV at cartoon time in the mornings and get some grinding girls wearing nothing on television. Where is the consistency? So, also, I just want to ask, on the position of, so for me it's more of a thing, it's political talk that the government would want to censor. So this stems into hate speech, which, I mean, I'm no racist, I'm very anti-racism, but if someone says something that's against the Israeli policies against Palestine, that could be categorised as a hate speech or something against Jews, and then maybe that would just be shut down if there is a movement to say, hey, let's have some peace in the Middle East or something like that, or trying to figure out, have some conversations or dialogue. And is this something that the Greens is going to try and push, or the government, or anyone that's, the Pirate Party or anyone that's involved in this movement, to try and say, hey, let's just stop with the lie about the child. This is just ridiculous. Anyway, what child looks at child porn? It's adults. Let's arrest them instead of blocking it. Let's arrest them. Find the sick, buggers behind this and arrest them, and let's focus on the real issue, which is government growth and growing, political dissent.
Thanks for that. You've summed it up really well. Look, I often think that talk about pornography says more about the people who are talking about it than what their real intent is. Like, you've summed it up.
Move it behind the speakers. That way. Yeah.
Oh, that's okay, I'll hold it. I'll hold it. Okay. So look, you've summed it up really well. I think that's part of our message, that it's not going to stop children being exposed to pornography. Some of the earlier speakers made the really important point, is the way most pornography moves around is not on the internet, it's by file sharing. And the other area, and what the government's proposing, is not going to impact on file sharing. And the other area where young people can run into problems is by cyber stalking in chat rooms. Now that's been all over the tabloids this week, some examples of it. Again, what the government is proposing is not going to change